So there was a lot more that I wanted to talk about than something I could put into a message. I figured it'd be easier to just record audio over this and talk about it. If this doesn't work for you guys, let me know and I can do something different in the future. As of now, I just wanted to say that the jack-o'-lantern enemy that Alex designed is, for the most part, done, as far as I'm aware. Something could change in the future, but as of now, it is done. I wanted to show you guys, I currently have a ring showing the aggression range when it turns on and chases Mega Man. If you enter range, it obviously chases him down, but something that I want to incorporate more of in this game, that, as far as I'm aware, Mega Man enemies don't do a whole lot. If you shoot at it, it knows I shot it and it chases me anyway. I like doing that. I have a Matal in the game currently from ages ago that's a bit smarter than your average Matal. If it turns around and you're close enough to it, it knows to shoot because you're obviously near it. If it knew you were close enough and behind it to turn around, it should shoot. I want to do more of that. Enemies are smarter and don't just have like a one-cycle behavior, and you could prematurely initiate an attack if you're not careful. I've got 2 of them here to show another aspect I have with these enemies and that I want to incorporate with all the enemies in the game, including bosses, is things change subtly depending on difficulty. Typically, games tend to just change damage values in difficulty levels. I don't want to do that. I think that's a really artificial difficulty change, because that's not making the game harder, that's just making it more punishing. If you've got a low tier enemy on normal difficulty and now it does the same damage as a mid tier enemy, that's not harder, that's just unfair. So in that top right corner where it says full, beneath that is a number. That number represents the current difficulty, with 1 being normal mode, 2 being hard mode, and 0 being easy mode. I only plan on doing 3 difficulty levels as of now. That could very easily change in the future because anything that changes based on difficulty is a formula, not like a list of states it takes in. So if I use my scroll wheel, you can see it goes to 0.99. I want to have dynamic difficulty, where it will just be as simple as it looks at how much you are taking damage and how well you are able to kill enemies, and finds a way to ratio itself out to make the game easier or harder based on how well you're doing in the game, basically. So if you're stuck on a boss fight forever and you have dynamic difficulty on, if you die 6 times on the highest sensitivity of difficulty scaling, it could then make the game easier because it goes, hey, this player's having a bit of trouble. So the way I'm doing that is just every time you do a thing that's considered a negative input, it starts scaling down, and then if you do a good thing, it scales up. With that number at the top right, you'll see as I scale it down, the range that they can attack you from gets bigger or smaller depending on how hard or difficult the game is. Other things that change with this enemy, how far to the left or right it'll move while in a patrol state, which is what you're seeing right now. The width it patrols in gets bigger the harder the game gets. So you have a higher chance of being found because the range it'll find you at and the range it'll search for get bigger the harder the game becomes. So an area that you deemed safe on an easier difficulty might not be safe in a harder difficulty, which means you have to think more about where you go during a stage. It's not just enemy does more damage. Same goes for, to show you an example of this, when I get chased down by this enemy, you will see how long it waits in between each chomp. It takes a long time to start up again. And that's because I am on the easiest difficulty level right now. It turns very wide, it moves very slow, it waits a long time between chomps. But if I were to instead turn the difficulty up, you can see now, it's chomping faster, it's moving faster, it's turning sharper. If I bring it all the way up, it's a lot more demanding. It waits far less time in between chomps, it turns much sharper, and it's a lot harder to dodge their attacks. So that's my plan for this game, is whenever something gets harder on a harder difficulty, it's not just changing a damage value. It's not going to say Mega Man dealt less damage to this enemy, or this enemy dealt more damage to Mega Man because the game's harder. It's going to be behavioral changes, and if you choose to have dynamic difficulty on, if I ever get to a point where that's in the game, it'll be happening at such a gradual rate because it's changing subtly. The only thing that goes on an if this difficulty then do this basis is just RNG drops. Drops are far more common on easier easier difficulties than on harder difficulties. And that has to be a finite thing, because it's taking from a list of possible drops. Everything else is taking the exact value of the difficulty. So with this being 2, with this being 1.49, with this being 0.89, it's going to be moving very subtly with each positive or negative effect you have on the game. So those changes, it'll be changing subtly. So as you're playing the game, you won't notice those changes if you have dynamic difficulty on. And if you choose to play on a harder difficulty, you might not notice what is difficult. It won't be something obvious like I took way more damage than I expected. It'll be subtle things like, wow, this enemy's harder to avoid, or wow, this enemy's harder to hide from, or wow, this enemy caught me quicker. If that makes sense. I have a specific interaction with Rain Woman's weapon where if it gets caught in the rain, it loses the fire. It does less damage. If it's not on fire, it normally does 6 points of damage. So going for a typical Mega Man health bar, I have it doubled so I can go in more finite units. That's the equivalent of a 3 damage attack in typical Mega Man stats versus a 2 damage attack. So very small difference, but it's there. It's for the players who are willing to experiment. So if you don't want to take as much damage from these guys and you don't want to get close, you can do this, and now they deal less damage to you, but the side effect is hitting them with the rain counts as dealing damage, which makes them chase you. I don't know if I'm talking too much. I haven't done this before, obviously, but this is sort of just an info dump. This is the current state of the enemy, the current state of my thoughts, the current state of the game, I guess. Thoughts, comments, questions, suggestions, anything helps. Again, I'm not making this game for me, I'm making it for the players. You guys, of course, being potential players, I want to get your thoughts on it, and especially to Alex, I asked the question in the server, I want to reiterate it here. Anything that you guys create for mini-bosses and enemies, you get first dibs on naming them. You get to choose the name. Obviously, as the creative lead, I can choose if I think of a better name or I don't like the name you chose. Obviously, I could change it if I feel like something better would fit. But any suggestions you guys have for names, I am completely open to that because I feel like it's the most fair for you guys to name the things that you create. But yeah, again, thank you guys for helping with the project. This is a really fun first enemy to add to the game, and I'm really looking forward to what else gets made.